Welcome back, brothers, tourists, and ladies, to another episode of the Chapter House, the Old Glory Club's look into the chapters and men who make up the Old Glory Club. Joining us this week is Tamarack, one word, nice and quick, from the great state of Idaho, and specifically northern Idaho. And joining us tonight to represent Tamarack is Matthew. How are you, sir?
Hello, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
I'm Matthew. I'm the vice president.
Well, thanks for joining us, man. And Hansel, how are you, sir?
Doing well. Glad to be here.
That's great. Glad to have you. Now, you guys are specifically from northern Idaho, which anybody who's not familiar with Idaho may not know that Coeur d'Alene is actually separated by quite a distance from Boise and the rest of Idaho by a large national forest, or forests, I suppose. But before we get into that, I gotta know, and I hope that the viewers are also curious on this. What is Tamarack?
Yeah, so Tamarack is a type of tree, and it's pretty unique to this area. On our flag, you can see that it's in a yellowish color, kind of an orangish color. It's unique because it's actually a deciduous pine tree, so it loses its needles in the fall, and it turns that bright color, and you can see all the mountains around. You can see all the tamarack trees, and it's just a very unique feature that we thought really represented this area. So that's how we landed on that.
So is this one of those trees, like, you know how in the Northeast, pine forests don't really have any other growth around them because the needles are so acidic that they basically bleach the land. I guess bleach is a base, but whatever. They fry the land around it so nothing else can grow. Is this similar with the tamarack?
Gee, I don't know about the ecology of it or how that all works, but it's a drier climate here than the rest of the Pacific Northwest. It's dry, so we don't get as much of that brush. There's little microclimates here and there where you'll see the sword ferns and whatever growing, but a lot of our forests are definitely less dense. There's a lot of ponderosa pines and things like that. So I don't know about I'm curious about that, the acidity. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, in general, our forests are a little bit less sparse or less lush.
Yeah, the forests.
I'm sorry, Hansel, go ahead.
Yeah, the forests here are mixed coniferous forests. So interspersed throughout, you have the tamarack trees, as well as in certain places you'll get aspens, birch, and the farther north you go, the higher concentration of white pine and cedars you'll get. Versus farther south, there's a lot more lodgepole, ponderosa pine, trees more attuned to drier climates versus, as Matthew alluded to, the microclimates where we have the inland temperate rainforest, similar to some of the areas of the coast of the Pacific Northwest where there's a lot more moisture and you get those very large hemlocks and Doug firs.
That's interesting. Looking at the topography of the Coeur d'Alene area, I guess, I guess all the way from the Nez Perce Reservation up to the Canadian border. It looks like you guys are really in the thick of the forest, and it brings to mind any of the I don't know how far, we're not far enough into the episode to use this term, but I'm going to do it anyway. Any old fags that remember the old copy pastas from K back in the day of human hunting and the spooky stuff in the forests, is that a big part of the culture up there?
I've never heard that mentioned here, but
Well, I mean, not specifically, the human hunting, but the spookiness of the forests.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a spookiness to the forest. What about you, Hansel?
Yeah, so I think part of it is that the natives, the Indians around here, they don't have that much cultural reach to where we are acutely aware of any stories of theirs that would indicate things beyond like the common Pacific Northwest Sasquatch. But the woods are ever present, and they are dark and thick, and so, out and about, I mean, just on my property, there have been wolves, bears, mountain lions, and thankfully no grizzly bears this far south yet, but they are moving down. So there is a certain eeriness of it's dark, you can't see, and the predators can see you.
Yeah, I mean, regular viewers will know I'm from New England, and the woods in New England, while they're not nearly as well, I mean, depending on where you are in New England, they can be as unbroken as they are anywhere else. But we had a brother from Pennsylvania come up, and he, got to my house and he said, "Dude, the woods around here are absolutely terrifying. Just driving through them is frightening." So I just wonder if this is the same sort of thing on the West Coast. But apparently, they're much more friendly in Idaho. But
I feel that they're very friendly. I've been on a few nighttime hikes where it's just, you turn, if you're gonna even turn on your headlamp, you turn it on the red, and you can see pretty good by moonlight around. So I would say I feel pretty friendly in the woods compared to the denser forest where I grew up in Western Washington.
Oh, so there is a large difference in the topography between northern Idaho and western Washington. I mean, it's not separated by that far, but is it just the coast is different?
Yeah, the Cascade Mountains basically cut off a lot of the rainfall as the wet air moves in from the west, from the Pacific Ocean. And so it's very dry, and then the forests actually start coming back and it's very apparent when you're driving in to northern Idaho. But yeah, the forests start coming back when you start to approach Spokane.
Interesting. Something you guys had mentioned, and I think this goes into what I was saying before about you guys very specifically being northern Idaho, is that there's a big difference between the culture of northern Idaho versus the southern. I don't know if southern Idaho would be considered a desert, but it definitely looks a lot drier than northern Idaho. Could you guys expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so North Idaho here, I mean, from Coeur d'Alene, it takes about 6 hours to drive to Portland, Oregon, and it takes about 5 to 5.5 to get to Seattle, versus just to drive to Boise is 8 hours, and it's in a different time zone. So with the multitude of border towns across from one another, you have Coeur d'Alene and Spokane, you have Moscow and Pullman, Lewiston, and right across the river is Clarkston for Lewis and Clark. There's a lot of populations that go back and forth between them. And so that interchange and following the rivers, going up and down the Columbia, the Snake River, the Spokane River, it's a lot more connected geographically and so culturally as well. The Northern Pacific Railroad goes through North Idaho on its way to the coast. So there's been a lot more interchange that way versus down in Boise, which is quite interesting because it's supposed to be one monolithic red conservative state, but it's still culturally quite different.
Yeah, Hansel, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think you're addressing me.
Oh, pardon. You guys sound very similar to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Hansel has a better idea of it than I do, but because I'm actually pretty recent to the area. I came over from, I actually moved out here from Portland, and before that, I lived mostly in Western Washington, so the area is somewhat new to me, and so the rest of the state is still a bit of a mystery to me.
Okay, yeah, interesting. So what you were saying, Hansel, is Southern Idaho. Would you say that's more the like where the red majority comes from, and Coeur d'Alene area is more infected by the politics of Spokane and Washington?
I would say that it's different. There have been plenty of times where people down in Boise have gotten a little spooked by some of the rhetoric from state politicians from North Idaho, because there are, people culturally entrenched families that have been around that put on that moniker of being ultra conservative, despite North Idaho only comprising about 20% of the state's population, versus in Boise where they have, I think I saw they had to take down the town flag because it was bad. There's a lot of kind of culture war stuff going on within the state. They just passed legislation that would be the harshest penalties for people using the wrong bathroom who identify as trans. And you have that coupled with, hey, we're going to get rid of registration stickers, tabs on license plates, because they cost the state $300,000 a year, and the officer can just run the plate when they pull you over. So you have that very interesting dynamic there, while also simultaneously looking to cut Medicaid spending at the state level. So you have a lot of that going on within the state, and there's people from the north and the south that are active in that. And I mean, like at the local level up here in Sandpoint, there was a whole issue of a tranny using the restroom at the YMCA, and that caused a whole town uproar and town hall meeting where they either revoked the statute that permitted that kind of activity, or they passed one. I can't remember, but this stuff.
So they
happens
passed one.
here.
They either revoked one permitting it or passed one preventing it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty based. So I guess I have it backwards. Boise is more is like less hardline in like the conservative sense.
Not being down there, I mean, there's plenty of guys down there that are in the works on potentially making a chapter, but from what it seems is that Boise is attracting a lot more of the cosmopolitan types. It's got the bigger downtown, more industry, and much more space to expand as they go out into the desert plain, versus here we're very limited geographically, with 2/3 of North Idaho being public lands. And so where people can build housing up here is much more limited, versus there it's cookie cutter houses as far as it's a suburban hellscape.
Okay, so Southern Idaho is more they're building out those hideous developments where it's just a bunch of McMansions on a road and nobody talks to each other, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because it's more affordable than North Idaho, and there's still a lot of the benefits of Idaho, with the fewer regulations, fairly safe, low crime, the nice schools. And that is shifting, though, over time, just because of construction begets NGOs working on resettlement programs there.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the next natural question. So obviously, southern Idaho. Well, I mean, this seems obvious to me that southern Idaho would be hit first by the diversification and the enshitting of bringing in peoples from the third world. Is that happening?
From what people tell me, it's happening at a higher rate down there, albeit much slower than certain areas. It hasn't been as transformative as other metropolitan areas, but people up here, they see a transit van with some Latin American contractors potentially going to a grocery store, and they flip out and post on Facebook, "What's going on here?" Right? Because it's just so jarring for a lot of the local populace, because they haven't been around much diversity.
So it's kind of, it's almost an area out of time. Would you say that the demographics are still mostly very white?
Yes, there, and within North Idaho, there are areas that are farther back in time, you could say. I've had my friend who's very well traveled say to me that when he went to the local grocery store in Hayden, Idaho, that it was whiter than when he was walking around Vienna, where he was just visiting. And there was a guy who said, "I saw a dude in a skirt at this grocery store. I got to move out to this spot in Idaho, farther away."
Well, I mean, that is very encouraging, that sort of thing. I mean,
I have another anecdote. I think that there's a lot of libertarian type roots here. One of my friends was telling me that he was kind of lamenting the fact that a lot of the old heads that he knew, they would drive around without license plates or without licenses, and that was kind of part of the culture. And he was saying, oh, all these Californians and whoever are moving out here and they're following the rules, and that's been a problem as well. So there is a bit of that in this area of it's kind of that I would have to say libertarian or sovereign citizen type of feel that's still here. And so a lot of people are kind of unhappy with how things have grown, because this area is growing quite a bit. There's a lot of new construction and things like that.
Well, so there's a couple of things you hit on. I mean, the libertarian aspect isn't really surprising. I know that Idaho is kind of famous for the Ruby Ridge incident. So I figure that, northern Idaho kind of sounds like what we call upstate New Hampshire in that regard. So, talking about how things are transforming across the country and demographically, and also with these crazy social contagions, is like the libertarian, what you were telling me, Hansel, is that the libertarianism doesn't really seem to extend to accepting of all of this stuff. Has there been a lot of push preventing this stuff from spreading in northern Idaho, or is this a losing battle that they've been fighting?
So there are several different groups that play politics in the region that try to not let it go too fast. You know, there are people in local politics who are trying to fight this kind of during the whole 2024 campaign. Every Saturday there would be the Trump train, which was a bunch of people got their American flags, their Trump flags, their Confederate flags, and would just drive around, like waving flags, honking horns and stuff. And the libertarian aspect of it, there is some of it. A big issue is, people move up here because they want to move someplace quieter and safer and want to be left alone. And so some people check out, but there is a large contingency of people who have moved up here who have been radicalized by where they're from. The sheriff of Kootenai County, he was originally in the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, and now he's the sheriff up here, and so he's got strong opinions and wants to fight this, and said that the cartels are trying to operate in the area. But as far as like the social contagion, it's people at school board meetings throwing a fit. There was a infamous incident where there was a woman dragged out of a kind of town hall meeting in Coeur d'Alene, who sued the officers and sued the sheriff's disruptive. So there's agitators on both of anything too extreme.
All right. Well, I mean, that is still, somewhat encouraging to know that there are some places in the United States where that aren't completely rotten. I know that, you talk about some of the more remote places like Northern Idaho. I mean, I don't know a damn thing about the Dakotas, but something tells me that shitlibs aren't flocking there for with the NGOs, but who knows? That's another episode. Shifting gears a little bit here with the before I ask this, so you guys haven't seen have you guys seen like a huge influx of Jeets up there?
No, I definitely not. I mean, Hansel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's the gas station Jeets, but there's not many of them. So that's where I encounter them. It's like I can think of 2 around me, but otherwise I don't see them at Safeway. I don't see them, at the mall or anywhere else. So that's been promising.
In my experience, I've seen them primarily at gas stations, at curry slop stands, and then occasionally at Walmart.
All right. You guys are really. I mean, this might be bad if we have everybody in the audience thinking that this sounds like a good place to move. We need people all over the country, right? But it is very nice to hear. And you said that your local sheriffs are, some of them can be hardline. As somebody who comes from a state that outlawed county politics, outlawed county governance in 1960, it's a nice thing to hear that you guys can have strong sheriff's departments. Is that something that's the state over, that you guys have like independent sheriffs that are they elected? Are they appointed? Do you know?
Yeah, the sheriffs are locally elected and are the chief law enforcement magistrate of the county that they're in.
So they have a lot of latitude, basically.
Yeah, and county by county, things can change quite drastically. for instance, in Kootenai County, there are, building requirements, building codes. You have to have various inspections, radon mitigation systems installed, versus Bonner County, where a man wanted to build something on his property and the building department denied him a permit. So he ran for the head of the building department at the county level and got elected, and then abolished the department. So there are no building codes in Bonner County, Idaho, which is just to the north of Kootenai County.
I mean, let's be honest. People say the American dream is dead. Obviously, it's still alive and well in northern Idaho. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's
just
been that
for
way
reference,
for decades.
Kootenai County is where Coeur d'Alene is.
I mean, that's perfect. There's something you said earlier that stuck out to me because I hadn't heard the story. So I, for my own edification, if you could share this, the Boise town flag. What's the story there?
Oh, I just heard about this peripherally because everything south of Lewiston doesn't matter. It was that Boise had to remove its pride flag yesterday because the governor signed House Bill 561, which imposes a $2,000 per day fine on government entities displaying unauthorized flags.
Amazing.
There's a beautiful video where the mayor, they have a whole ritual where they're taking that flag down, and she's kind of choking up, giving her little spiel, and it's coming down. It's great.
I mean, that's it sucks that somebody like that is in your state, but that is very, very funny that it's that she had to remove her own religious symbol from the mayoral house, which is just good for Idaho. I was actually curious about because Idaho late entry into the Union. What if you could give us a little bit of history of Idaho? Who settled it? What is the religious history of Idaho? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So the you've got the Hudson Bay Company coming in after the French trappers came into the region in the early 1800s, and they were the first to come down here, trade with the various tribes, and that's why a lot of places around here have funny names, right? Trying to spell Coeur d'Alene is a very futile exercise in French phonetics, and so you just have to learn how to spell various things. Kootenai, Kootenai. There's lots of different things like that have Lake Pend Oreille. That's a really fun one. Look up how that's spelled, and then, it's Pend Oreille. Not to be confused with the town, which is spelled with Anglo phonetics. So, the French came here and interacted with the various tribes, on behalf of the Hudson Bay Company, getting furs, and then they had heard of these men with black robes who knew this great spiritual knowledge that the French told them about, right? Referring to Jesuits. And so these various tribes had their own prophecies of men with these black robes coming and giving them spiritual knowledge. So they actually requested that the Jesuits come and teach them. And so they sent Jesuit priests to the area up here, and they started working on a mission on the St. Joe River, which is at the south end of
Hansel, I think you might be changing satellites. Yeah, we can hear you now. You started breaking up after you mentioned the southern end of Lake Coeur d'Alene.
Yes, so they built a mission there, and then they had to relocate it near Cataldo. And it was built in 1841, and it's the oldest still standing structure in Idaho in totality, as well as the region up here. So there was early Catholic influence in the area with the Jesuits, but the Catholics now, I would say, are the second strongest minority after Protestantism.
So something you guys were saying before we went live that kind of caught me off guard was the prevalence of like the kind of dispensationalist evangelicals in the area, which, in my mind, those are the kind of people relegated to the Bible Belt in the South, the kind of insane dispies, but they're in Idaho.
Yes, and they punch very heavily considering their size. You go to the local sporting goods store in Coeur d'Alene, and there are lots of people there wearing pins with the American flag and the Israeli state flag. And so there's a lot of Christian Zionists, specifically in the Coeur d'Alene area, and they are politically active.
So I imagine that on the political front, that represents, is that something that other people have to fight against? Like, we have the governor of Florida famously going to Israel to sign an anti-Semitism bill in Florida. For Floridians, I should say. We've got Hot Wheels down in Texas, who seems to be just as much of a Zionist. Is that something that's infected the entirety of the state government?
At the state level, I'm unsure. At the local level, the recently elected mayor, Dan Gukin, who originally got famous for writing one of the few how-to for dummies, and then sold it off, I believe. There is a picture of him with some Shabbat Lukovich, or whatever that's pronounced as, some small-headed gentleman in the mayoral office announcing that it's like a day of learning to commemorate the Rebbe or whatever it is. So at the local level, that's passed. The city of Coeur d'Alene also passed hate speech laws that are in accordance, I believe, with the International Holocaust Remembrance Association standards.
I mean, that's flatly ridiculous. I'm amazed. How long ago did this happen?
This happened after, I believe it was the Utah State women's basketball team came to town to participate in the sports ball game, I think over in Spokane. And there was a guy who allegedly yelled the hard R outside a bar at them as they passed by. And recently, allegedly, a guy harassed some feathered Indians at a park. And so it was at that point that they passed it. So yes, it's been very recent, within the last 16 months or so.
Okay, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of work to be done to still fight against the rot creeping in. Something like that, hate speech laws. One wants to believe that they wouldn't stand up to any sort of challenge in court, but that sort of thing takes money, and obviously nobody's been, I guess, convicted of hate speech yet. Is that true?
Not to my knowledge. And they even passed a specific ordinance to where if you rev your truck loudly, that it's a violation as well, because people would drive by people protesting and rev their trucks.
Yeah, it's kind of
I mean,
interesting that that happened before the hate speech laws came in. I started noticing these signs downtown that there was, some kind of a what do you call it? There, like a
Ordinance?
volume ordinance or disrupting the peace ordinance or something. There were like these signs that were up before we got the hate speech laws, so they were using that first and until they could, so they're using that as kind of like a little crux until they could get the hate speech laws passed.
yeah, a little wedge to widen the gap for that sort of stuff. And this is local to Coeur d'Alene.
Yep.
Interesting. So you said that there's still like a pretty sizable Catholic minority up there, or is that largely dwindled?
There's still a large Catholic presence in the area. We have several members in the chapter who are professed Catholics, and so they are a force in the area for conservatism typically, because there is a traditional Latin Mass congregation as well as an SSPX congregation in the area, which are typically much more conservative than a typical Novus Ordo parish.
All right, interesting. There was something that you again mentioned before the show started. It was something about the silent brotherhood or the order. Now, I'm not familiar with these terms. Could you elaborate on those a little bit?
Yeah, so that goes back into the history of hate associated with North Idaho as various groups. The order, they call themselves the Silent Brotherhood, Die Brüder Schweigen, and it was headed by a guy named Bob Matthews, who was a white separatist who advocated for the Northwest Imperative, which is having whites move to the region to help further populate it and cement demographics in a specific region that could sustain a population and into perpetuity. And they were not directly associated with the Butler compound, but they went on to commit several crimes in order to try to achieve their aims, and were eventually apprehended and dissolved, in a very infamous gunfight on Whidbey Island over in the Puget Sound in Washington. And Bob Matthews, several members of it lived in the North Idaho area, whereas Bob Matthews lived over the border in Washington, up in Medellin Falls, which is from Coeur d'Alene, probably about 2.5 hours away. And so that was a very infamous group that operated here that brought some of the, reputation of it being a very, dark place.
Interesting. So, I've seen this. I've seen this kind of flag or idea online of Cascadia, just the whole area being like Cascadia white nationalism. Is that where it stems from?
Cascadia, as a autonomous region, really transcends political lines. There are hardline leftists who utilize the Doug flag, which is typically what's associated with the Cascadia movement, which is similar to ours, but with a Doug fir, which is where we took inspiration from, whereas we, wanted to be different. And there are, Northwest Imperative guys, Harold Covington, very big on the Northwest Trilogy, whereas there's been lots of right-wing people who have advocated for moving to the area to achieve its independence. So the concept of Cascadia, it goes either way.
All right. So, the separatism thing is kind of, it's more like local supremacy rather than any kind of like single, I guess, regional supremacy over any kind of political line.
Yeah, and it goes up into British Columbia as well, with people wanting to break away, because Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, BC, they all are very closely related to each other in commerce and culture, versus places to the south like San Francisco, or to the east like in Montana.
So it's still kind of a I mean, if we're going to talk about these major cities as being kind of nowhere places, like where the people who can live, I guess, nowhere, anywhere, versus the people who call, like, they're from Washington, they're from Idaho, they're from British Columbia, they're not like anywhere peoples. Is this pretty much the divide?
Yeah, they're from different areas, and there's a lot of rivalry between Washington and Oregon. People poo-poo on people from Portland if they're from Seattle, and vice versa. But there's still a much more kinship of they are Pacific Northwest and would prefer to be independent, just because they don't jive well with other regions.
All right. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Everyone that I've spoken to from the Pacific Northwest has definitely been a PNW supremacist, which I think is very funny. If anyone wants to check out the Cascade Frontier episode that we did, you'll get a dose of that, which, dear listener, I do encourage you to listen to. You should be listening to all of these. I don't know why you're lacking here, but we've spent most of this episode talking about Idaho itself. Tell me about Tamarack as a chapter. How do you guys what do you guys get up to out in the forests up there?
I think us at Tamarack, we're a nascent chapter. We're still growing, and we're totally fine with that. We're playing the long game. We're looking to build something that we can hand down to our sons in the future. And so we're not really actively recruiting in any sense. We figure people will come out. The men that want to join, they're gonna find us, and that's the way it's gonna be. So for a while now, we're gonna be relatively small, and that's not to say that we're not trying to do that. We're sitting around doing nothing. We have several different initiatives, such as normal brotherhood things, like Hansel lives on a property, and we can go out and get together and clean up his land a little bit. One of our members has a local sort of public trail that could use a little bit of work. We'll get out there. We've got some hikes that we're going on, things like that. So yeah, for now it's more of a long-term aim, and that's kind of how we view it. We're not concerned about, I know that there's plenty of chapters out there that are really getting up and they're churning, and it's very impressive to us. But if we take some time to get to that point, that's okay as well. Hansel, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, the fraternal aspect, getting together very frequently. The entire chapter had the distinct pleasure of seeing me sing karaoke at the bar last week. And they said I did all right.
I mean, as far as karaoke compliments goes, that's the best one, because nobody wants to watch somebody who's good at singing do karaoke, right? They want somebody who's right in the middle.
And unfortunately, Hansel is actually quite good, and he puts us all to shame. So we're a little trepidatious to get in there in the mix. But yeah, that's another fun thing to do as well. You know, there's no problem with getting together at a bar and just shooting the shit. You know, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is great. Like the aspect where you guys are we're into, with the chapters that are on this chapter house now, we're kind of deep into the third founding chapters, and so none of you guys and right now have been around like nearly as long as the guys on the East Coast say. So starting with focusing on the brotherhood is exactly where you should be starting, especially doing things like you were saying, cleaning up trails, helping your brothers with their homestead. That's absolutely ideal. And one of my favorite authors, who was British, came to the United States in the 60s, and what he said was, he took a Greyhound across the country just to see it, and he said his favorite thing about America is how many different Americas there are. And while the globalization and the easy transit of people have kind of done some damage to that, I think the Old Glory Club is best for kind of echoing that sentiment. The best thing about the Old Glory Club is how many different Old Glory Clubs there are. I'm really and that's why the show exists. We want to get the regional flavor, and you guys will be on again next year, so you'll have a lot more to, or later this year, so you guys will have more to add to that, I'm sure. How has it been? Have you guys been doing a lot of interfacing with Cascade Frontier or with the Lewis and Clark?
So far, a few of us have gone over and done events with Cascade Frontier that they've put on, and they've been grand old time. We have ties and connections with various members over there, and we keep in, regular enough contact. Could always be more. Lewis and Clark has not been, just because they're, farther away, and many of us, being in North Idaho, also have relations with family that we can stay with on the west side. So we haven't done much yet, but there's another Montana chapter in the works that's going to be closer to us, and so hopefully we can work more with them.
Now, you guys had mentioned that you had some people in southern Idaho that were looking to spin up a chapter. What's that like going on down there?
Yeah, it seems like they have a pretty sizable group that they're organizing right now. Obviously, I don't want to put words in their mouths, but it seems like they're really getting their ducks in a row, and they're going to be coming onto the scene here, hopefully shortly. Yeah, some of those guys I've met at a Cascade Frontier event, and yeah, that's very promising. There might be another chapter in Idaho as well. I don't know how much I want to go into that, but possibly in sort of south of us, so more middle of Idaho even.
Yeah, I mean, this becomes a tiresome refrain for the people who are listening to this show as regularly as they should be. But these states are so large, it's kind of required, especially in a place like Idaho, where it seems like you guys only have a couple of main roads to get from north to south. and so you don't really have a lot of option going around these large forests or mountain ranges. Before we moved on, I wanted to just get a normal question for you guys. What's the demographics of Tamarack like right now, age-wise?
It would be primarily millennials, mostly in the 30s, one late 20s, one early 40s. So I would say probably pretty average relative to the rest of the club.
Yeah, I mean, we do tend to be in that way. And something just popped into my mind. I was talking to the head of another organization earlier today, and he mentioned that he had met a lot of the old Glory Club members at one of the Cascade Frontier events recently, and that he was quite impressed by all the guys from the Pacific Northwest. So in my mind, that includes all the Tamarack boys who were there. So I hope you guys had a good time.
One of the things that's impressed me, a large portion of our membership are Eagle Scouts. Not me. I was only ever a Boy Scout, but that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, you guys are in the middle of the woods. What else is there to be when you're when you're growing up out there?
Exactly.
And also, if you're millennials, this is kind of the tail end of when being an Eagle Scout actually meant something. These days, I have absolutely no idea what is required to become an Eagle Scout, but I imagine it's something similar of what's required to advance beyond a colonel in the military. Well, I guess we'll leave it at that. I'm gonna hop over real quick to the super chats. Thomas Wayne Riley for $10. Hansel was my first paid subscriber, and we talked on the phone before we knew we were in the same place. He's even visited our chapter here in New Mexico when we were on a camp out. I'm glad to see the chapter up and running, and I can't wait to come up and visit. And he gives us a salute the way all real Americans do. Oh, there you go, guys. You got some love from your friends in the Southwest. Have you spent quite a bit of time down there?
Yes, I was just down there in the fall, and I was able to join them briefly on one of their outings, and it was a grand old time. New Mexico has a very special place in my heart, and so I like to spend time there when I can.
And I'll add that to all of our brothers in the area or abroad, if you please come and visit, we'll figure out a way to put you up if you want to come and check us out.
I mean, that's a resounding call, and I don't know if you're the first ones to put that out there, but I'd like to hear that from more chapters that we have on in the future. And I'm going to take you up on that at some point because I gotta get out of the area that I'm in. It's just insane, and you guys are really selling me on Idaho.
It's all right. The area is extremely transient in the sense of the majority of the population is not from here originally.
Well, it seems like there's still a lot of fighting to do in order to make sure that it stays the way that we all want it to. But
amen.
Yeah, that's a future problem, and something tells me it is a never-ending future problem. Before we get out of here, I ask every chapter this, so I hope this is expected. If you could give your brothers any piece of unsolicited advice, although I have solicited it from you, what would it be?
I would say that one of the most important things that a man can have in his quiver is other men. A man who can bring men to a situation to fight with him, whatever that fight is, if it's against the massive lawn he has to mow, or overcome, tragedy. Building the bonds with the men that you do have and cementing them is probably the most important thing you can do. The quality and strength of the men that you do have far outpaces the number that you might get.
Well said.
Amen. Matthew?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think I'm not even going to add to that. I think that was beautifully said.
Yeah, I mean that's perfect. That's one of our one of my friends, Thomas 777, is constantly talking about how social capital is the most important thing that men can be building right now, and it's very important that the men of the OGC take that to heart. And I'm glad to hear that the Tamarack. Now, if I'm going to refer to it as the Tamarack, is it the Tamarack Society, the Tamarack Collective? You guys want anything else on the end there?
It's Tamarack, the North Idaho Woodsman.
Perfect. All right, and I think that's the perfect note to close out on. Well, thank you, Hansel. Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Tamarack, for this showing on the Chapter House. Be sure to join us next week for the Great Basin Collective out of the great state of Nevada. Be sure to check out Pony Express Radio, the finest stop for all the slop, every Thursday at 8, 9. It's on the schedule. You guys will be able to find it. And American Spirits, where all the serious work is being done, every Monday at 8. Of course, these are in Eastern Standard Times, the best time for the